And we're live. G'day, I'm Scotty North, and this is Property Realm, where we discuss all things about property. And well, we can't discuss it with one person, right? So, Realmers, where are you? Where are you, boys? Where are you?
We've been here the whole time, Scotty.
Where we
Oh,
should
wow!
be.
Isn't it amazing the technology? I just push a button and you appear. It's almost like it was pre-rehearsed. So there you go. All right. Thanks, Remo. Remo's texting me saying he's waiting for me. I'm late, even though I'm here running the show now. So that's fine. That's what you get when you deal with professionals, Remo. That's all I've got to say. Anyway, today's topic is technology's impact on property prices, and so I'm going to throw to you guys as the specialists in that area, and. As to what that might be. No, in all seriousness, this is an open discussion, okay? We're not saying we have the answers to this stuff. We are literally having a discussion, whether it's here and you're commenting online, or whether it is after the fact and you put some comments in, we'll answer and we interact. We want to know what you think is going to happen with property prices and what sort of impact it's going to have. And the reason is a couple of things, right? We've just had the Corona event. And with the Corona event, we see things like the work from home, or they're moving from capital cities to regional, all that sort of stuff. And that's been going on, right? So what I want to know is how that's going to play out as we go forward, and what does that look like? And it's not just that, right? It's not just working from home. There's other technologies like self-driving vehicles. You can do some work on the way to work, right? If you don't have to drive. Or what about a little drone thing that flies you and it cuts your travel time by, 80%, and therefore you can live further out of the city and still commute in a decent time frame. So that's all the stuff we want to sort of discuss today. So who wants to go first?
I will. I think I'm going to leave flying a drone from my house to Sydney so I can work in Sydney and fly 3 hours away to the experts such as yourself and your best friend, Elon Musk. Hashtag. However, in terms of property pricing, where people are now deciding to buy and so forth, technology is obviously making it easy. I'm finding, speaking to some of our joint venture partners, potential joint venture partners, investors, friends in the real estate industry, and acquaintances, finding that a lot of people from Sydney are now looking elsewhere. Harvey Bay is something, is an area that's come up. Cairns is obviously another area that's super easy to purchase in, purely because you can buy a beautiful house in Cairns for, under $500,000. So people looking for investment properties, they're sort of moving out of Sydney and Melbourne and looking elsewhere. And doing so, purely buying a property without actually having to look at the property, being there face to face and actually, having a walkthrough. They've now got the technology which puts them in touch with buyer's agents, or they can pretty much just jump online, have a walkthrough on the street through Google Maps, or they will have a Zoom or a Skype call with someone in the area, an agent in the area that typically just walks into through the house and shows them what it looks like, and they press the button to buy. So I certainly think on that perspective, it's allowing people to buy property in other areas. And I have a little minion walking behind me. I apologize for that. I've got a sick child at home. She should be on technology, being homeschooled right now. Um, but yeah, that's certainly my thoughts. I definitely think it's definitely gonna. Well, it certainly has bumped up other areas and created growth in other areas purely because we now have that technology to speak with people, have virtual tours, and look at property nowhere near where we live.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's right. So that's on the, I guess, on the purchasing and buying side. So what about on the transacting side? So after just looking at that, like, see how you deal with a lot of people with us that
Transacting,
you
yeah.
mentioned, never met us, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, like what Remo was saying, people can buy now without actually seeing property in person. And like we've got many joint venture partners all over Australia, different states, who actually haven't met us in person or seen our development sites in person themselves, but they have access to it. So, we're moving into a space where people have a lot more access to information. So, I believe with the increase in technology, it'll allow people, property owners, property investors, to have access to a lot more opportunities, so they can be able to purchase things. So what I'm seeing at the moment is that homeowners and property investors actually have access to a lot more information and education. So they've got access to a lot more data. I'm finding that the buyers that I'm speaking to, or property owners and investors, they have they no longer just have a bit of an idea of their local space, where previously homeowners and investors would be limited to their local area because it's what they know. Nowadays, they're becoming a lot more aware of what's happening in other states and other territories, and it allows them to make or have access to greater opportunities. So it used to be the case where if anyone dealing with property, dealing with hundreds of thousands, if not millions, they require a face-to-face meeting, which is, it often helps, but it's more so not required now. So a lot more investors are relying on data. They have access to that. They have proof and education through technology sources, so they're able to make decisions without having without really requiring all the personal touches that were reliant on previously.
Mm, so that's so in essence, the world gets smaller, right? The more technology happens. I mean, you've gone from horse and cart to steam engine to boat, whatever, and that world gets smaller, inverted commas, as we go forward, and technology is doing the same thing. So we've got that background. We know there's a massive uplift in availability of technology and data and what have you right now. So my question is, which is the topic of the show, now we've painted that picture, what do we think that's going to do to prices on property? Now, it doesn't have to be a blanket answer, but maybe we can go into specific prices. What will happen with that? So I want to have a discussion about that, because I think that's the most interesting part, because we don't necessarily have control over the technology. You have control over the technology that you use. Do we use something like we're using now, like for live streaming, or do we send a fax, right? Like, you got that choice, but we don't have necessarily an option or a choice to develop that technology. I don't develop technology. You guys don't. Most of our clients don't develop new technologies and just choose to do it or not. So the point is, that's going to happen anyway. So the only thing you've got a choice of is whether you use it. So understand that most people are going to use, the technology. I just had we've got a farmer as a neighbour, as an old farmer. He's retired. He's like 70, and he's got a smartphone. He's out there showing me pictures of his last mustering with cows, right? Like, so people use technology of all ages. We understand that. What is that going to do to property prices? That's what we want to get here, because that's where the opportunity lies for us and our clients. So let's just talk capital cities at the moment, right? If this work from home thing expands and continues to go, or just continues like it has done from the corona event, then what is that going to do to inner city living? Will new people come in and fill that, or will those residential places need to turn into something else? Or if you're working from home, maybe people still live there, but the office towers aren't getting used. What's going to happen? Let's have a discussion about that. Who's going first?
Yeah, I'll go again. That's a very interesting question. I guess we don't really know what's going to happen, but what I can see, what I would anticipate would happen is a lot of those office blocks would be repurposed. I think we're going to see a lot of discounted um, units become for sale in the major cities. I think people are also going to start choosing where they want to live, right? Like, I live in Paradise. I live in Nelson Bay. I'm 2 minutes, 5 minutes walk from the beach, and I work from home and I work from an office. I'm flexible. I think a lot of people are moving into that space of being flexible. I think what it's going to do. And I know we said that we are purely going to talk about like the major CBDs, and I'd like to, but I think what we're going to see in the major CBDs is we're going to see a bit of a decline in property value, and we're going to see places that are slightly more rural or beach areas go up in value because people are going to be able to go and live the type of lifestyle that the three of us are living, and a lot of other people. So I think we're going to see regional areas go up in value, and I think we're already seeing that, right? I think we're already seeing, as I mentioned before, Cairns and Harvey Bay and the likes. I mean, there's a lot of places. Those are just two places that stand out on the map purely because that's a lot of where buyers agents are looking at the moment. But I think that's what we're going to see.
Yeah,
I think so too, and I think the rate of price increase will increase faster. So movement from location, the capital growth in different areas can fluctuate and move a lot more quicker with access to technology. But I believe that the key fundamentals of what drives property prices will still remain the same, whether it's lifestyle or work purposes. The key fundamentals of what will drive the increase of value will still remain the same. People will still lifestyle will still move a lot of people to certain areas and increase and affordability will be another factor. But having access to technology will allow a lot more homeowners and investors to be able to have more opportunities, which will again increase prices. But that's what I see happening. I agree with what Remo was saying with what will happen with lifestyle areas versus main cities. But the rate at which prices will increase and the opportunities available for consumers will increase with technology.
Yeah, so I put because I do those fairly daily sort of tweets and what have you out, and about a month or so ago, I did a whole series on idea and find and all this sort of stuff and broke all that down at this little system that we use. And one of the things we touch on there is when it comes to an area or when you're coming to rent a property out, you need to know three things: want, need, and ability or can. Right? So can is in I can do it. So let me break that down. So who wants to live in that house or who wants to live in that area? Who needs to live in that area or that house, which is in that area? And who can live in that area, right? Or who has the ability to live in that area? And those are really, that's it, right? When you come to an area, so let's take a mining town. So there's not too many people that necessarily want to live in a mining town. They grow up there and they love it or whatever. But most people who live there, maybe because they need to live there, because they don't do fly in, fly out or something like that, right? And of course, the can doesn't sort of so much matter in that regard, unless it's really priced out and the people who want to live there can't afford to live there. So you sort of get where you start to paint a picture. So let's look at say a beachside suburb out of a CBD. Now, prior to Corona, I know we had Zoom and all that sort of stuff, but still, the work from home really wasn't as cranking as what it was now, right? So you've got a bunch of people who want to live by the beach and be a Remo and walk to the beach and what have you. And there's not necessarily a bunch of people that need to live there, okay? Like maybe your hospitality and other services and whatever you. But if you're a CBD worker in upper management or something like that, like you don't need to live at the beachside suburb, right? Because it's too far to transit. But those people can afford to live there, right? So it all comes down to they can afford to live there if they can still do their work there from that area. And this is what's changed in the current environment. So we now have this ability of people to live in the areas that they want to live in, whereas before they couldn't, right? So they now have the ability to. And that's one of the things that changes and has changed in this regard with the work from home. And moving on to the next topic of, say, self-drive cars and the personal drones and stuff, which I've got flicking through on the screen behind me, that then just furthers that once again, right? I mean, because we've now gone that I only got to transit to the office once or twice a week, but I still got to drive a car. And when I do, the traffic's not as bad as it was before Corona, but still pretty bad. To potentially, on a self-drive basis, that you can do a whole bunch of work on your trip in, just like you could on a train, except you're in your own private space. And then to a drone basis where it cuts the travel times by anywhere up to 80%. So that's the next step, right? And so this changes this whole want, need, and ability to live in places, because all of a sudden I might find a farm out west that I get away, don't have to be near neighbours, and I can still transit to the Brisbane CBD in 30 minutes in a drone, and I live them in 300 k's away or something. Like, I don't know, whatever, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the sort of thing that there is no way you would live there if you had to drive, but you can now take a drone and transit, and your times are fine, and I can work on the way. So that sort of stuff is going to change property prices, because if you have the ability to not have to be in a CBD, unless you want to be in there, you don't have to be in there. So that demand from a necessity point of view is going to change.
I agree. And in the next 5, 10 years, I think that's where we'll see a lot of the changes, where I can see in Melbourne where workers, especially those who are above mid 40s or into their 50s, we've seen a bit of a trend, speaking with interior designers here in Melbourne, where she's been able to see a lot of homeowners who live a little bit closer to the city. They've made lifestyle choices to purchase property closer to the beach. And what they'll do is during the weekends, they'll go over to their beach house, and then when they're working, they'll go back to their house that's closer to the city. So I think you're right with drones and transport. The way that will increase and evolve over time, that will cut down or increase the number of people that will make those lifestyle choices. Again, that will influence price and things like that. But I definitely think that's a key factor in the next 5 to 10 years and how people make choices.
Yeah, I think you're right. So look, I posted this yesterday in preparation for like this type of chat, right? And this is something I pinched off like one of the Melbourne papers, which is actually from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. And so this was the result of during and post Corona for like the capital cities. And you can see here the overseas migration. Well, we just didn't have any. It dropped off. And as we all know, just about everyone comes into Melbourne, right? So they land in Melbourne, and away we go. So that wasn't happening. So Melbourne was a big disadvantage for Melbourne when overseas migration stopped. But it was also almost equal with Sydney of what they call internal migration. So that doesn't mean they all packed up and go to Queensland. That can be that they're moving within the state as well. So a lot of people in Melbourne might have moved out to the regions, and same with Sydney. And then of course, Brisbane was the greatest recipient of internal migration. But you can see, if the chart is correct, that it is by no means equal to the amount of internal migration within New South Wales and Victoria. Do you see what I mean? So yes, there was a portion that went to Queensland, but the greatest portion of these sort of movements was actually within their own states. Okay, where they just went, bugger this, we're out of here, and this is what went on. So this is an interesting chart. So yes, Brisbane was it wasn't quite the overall. Sydney still had the most, because that's the blue one is natural increase. So Sydney didn't work, and they just said, well, we're going to make babies. So that's what happened in Sydney. And Melbourne almost tried that as well. But Brisbane was the greatest recipient of internal migration. So it's kind of was almost as much as Sydney on growth. But that's pretty impressive from Sydney, just from a birth perspective, that natural increase there. A natural increase, I guess, could also mean that they stopped killing people with guns or whatever happens on the street down there, Remo. I don't know. I don't live in Sydney. So, it is what it is. But that's an interesting chart. We've got a serial commenter here. Michael is on. He loves his Geelong. He talks about Geelong. So that's a good point, right? I mean, that's some of the internal migration there within the Melbourne area. So that's an interesting chart. And we're seeing that this stuff is like the stuff we're talking about has already happened. Now, we've talked about that. We know that we can get a drone, we can fly here, we can fly there, and we can do whatever, right? The question I've got is, what we've just seen with Corona, do we think it's going to reverse? Do we think it's going to go back? Those people who didn't need to go to work will sort of go, oh, this work from home thing's no good. I've got to control my kid in the background or my dog that's going to come through the door over here, because I left it open accidentally before I jumped on the show. You know what I mean? Like, but if I go to an office, I don't have that. It's focused and whatever. Like, will it wear off? That's the question. What do you reckon, Remo?
Yeah, look, I think you make a valid point there. I think what we're going to see, and just to add a little bit to property prices, a lot of people, because of what's happening now in this current space of I don't have to go into the office anymore, people are now looking, instead of looking for a 3-bedroom house because they've got a wife and kids, they're now looking for a 4-bedroom house or a 5-bedroom house purely because they want an office. So I think what we're going to see is a lot of properties that have 3 bedrooms or less. I think there's going to be a lot more of them available on the market because
See,
people
that's
are
an
going to want
interesting point because the 3-bedroom house has been a trend that I've been talking about for like 15 years. It's been a huge growth, right? Because they didn't need all the rooms and the number of occupants per house is the technical term was dropping, right? And so, but you're suggesting we may see the opposite of that. Not that the occupant numbers will change, although Sydney might have something to do with that, you Sydney siders, but is the fact is they want more usable rooms in the house. They actually need more bedrooms.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I do. I think for people like myself, who's obviously a single dad with 2 kids, um, if I was to shift in that space, I would probably go and want to rent or buy a 3-bedroom house purely because, I mean, having more than 3 is too enough, and I'd want an office. Um, but so we might see that 3-bedroom houses sort of stick around for longer, and they still, get great value and see good market prices. But I do feel like I sort of seeing it in the marketplace now. Obviously, having a lot of friends that are in entrepreneurship and people that are in sales and marketing and working from home. Even my best mate Jay, who's just moved up from Sydney, close to where we live, he's gone from a 2-bedroom unit in the Shire to living in a 3-bedroom house now because he needed that one extra bedroom for an office. But should anyone have a bigger family with 3 kids, obviously 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom houses are going to become more popular, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That is, but I think that's what we're going to see.
So, CO, do you need like a 20-bedroom house for all your cousins?
Yeah. No. No, but I will need an extra bedroom for the 3rd baby on the way. But to answer your question and might share my thoughts on whether things will reverse from COVID, I believe businesses, families, people have evolved since over the last couple of years, and I don't believe it will reverse so much. Just from what I'm seeing here in Melbourne, a lot of families and businesses have adapted where businesses have saved money and not utilizing so much of their office spaces and have encouraged their employees to work from home a little bit more than they traditionally have been, which has helped as well. But I'm also seeing in Melbourne the number of new builds for 4 bedrooms have become a lot more popular, and there's less of the 3 bedrooms. So I'm seeing that things will continue to evolve and probably won't reverse. What are your thoughts, Scott?
Yeah, well, firstly, I'm going to comment. Michael says Remo's on the money. So whatever you're paying Michael, Remo, you probably got to keep doing it because he's all for you there. And look, I think you're probably right as well. My thoughts are as this, right? So I watched the property market for many, many years, and we all know that the property itself, like, is in good property in good areas is always good, right? But what was defining good area? Was the CBD a good area? Well, yeah, it was. And now is it still a good area if people aren't going to be there as much? Well, I think people still will be there, right? People aren't all going to jump out and go and buy farms and live with no neighbours. People in general like community. It just means that they have the option of other things. So they may still stay in the CBD, they may move further out. If anything, the CBDs may become more populous. It just won't be with office spacing as much, right? So if you can work from home, if you did a 2-day, 3-day split with your office, then you can effectively have twice the number of people in your office. Okay. So therefore, you got a choice. You can either hire twice as many people if you have the financial ability to do that, or you can halve your office space. Okay. So unless we get doubling of the business productivity in those areas, then those offices are going to be repurposed. But that doesn't necessarily mean that property is bad property. Okay. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we're going to see CBD prices tank and all this and that. I'm just saying there could be more options of different things as we move forward. And it will probably hold some regional areas much more underpinned and stable than we've seen in the past, because we're going to have that more constant residents in that area, because they're working from home at least 2 days a week or whatever, right? So it does change where you spend the money. Like you're either spending it at home in doing your lunches yourself, or you're still going to pop down your local coffee shop for your coffee, as opposed to the coffee shop under the office in the CBD. So your money spend can change as well. And that's very important to remember. So I'm not so sure that things are going to reverse. I think that Corona was a big enough event that people jumped on and went, that's it, I'm having a life change, I'm out of here. But we just haven't seen CBDs tank like the data says that it probably should have. We have seen the regions be underpinned and grow. Now, will that still stay that way? Some people get jack of having to drive 10 minutes to go to Coles and go back to the CBD and walk to Coles. Sure. But I think in majority, with the way that now it's accepted, just a lot of these things are like accepted. We've talked before that Zoom wasn't created in Corona. It was created well before Corona. But now everyone knows it. My grandmother knows it. You know what I mean? Like everyone knows Zoom now. And so these things are now an accepted tool, just like a mobile phone is. And that's the sort of stuff that changes. And while we're on that topic there, I'm going to say, Michael's trying to kiss some butt here, I think, Remo.
I don't know why he's kissing yours or not mine, though.
That's because you... Yes, right. I don't pay him, you pay him, right? So, yeah. All right, look, I'm gonna call it there, because we kind of dug this out. We don't have we always said from the top, we don't have the answers, right? We just want to have an open discussion on this. I think that new technologies will definitely underpin the value of properties further out, because people like me, actually people like all of us, right, that we can transit to our office space quicker in the CBD with the new technologies, or easier or more efficiently with self-drive cars, etc., all that sort of stuff. And this technology is coming. There's a big announcement by Mercedes this week on the legalities around self-drive cars, and I think that it is an absolute game changer. So there's always been, I don't want to get into a car topic here, but the issue that has been with self-drive and automated vehicles is who's responsible for when it's self-driving. And it was always the person behind the wheel. So on Tesla's autopilot, you're responsible if the car crashes, right, as the driver. Well, this week, Mercedes came out and said, if you use our equivalent of autopilot system, which I'm sure has a German name, then they take on responsibility. You're no longer in control of the car. It's Mercedes' responsibility if that car crashes. Now, that's a big deal. That is a very, very big deal, because that's going to see the ushering in of technologies in a lot quicker fashion, because they've now changed the goalposts on that in a big way. Now, there's a whole bunch of reasons I'm not going to get into as a car topic of why they've done that, servicing and other bits and pieces, but that is a game changer, and we'll see that technology now underpinned by one of the largest traditional manufacturers coming out in a much more forceful manner. So these things are coming whether we use them or not, and it's going to change the property market. And that's my thoughts on the matter.
One thing I'd like to add, having a chat with some of the people in my group a couple of weeks ago in Sydney, we're seeing a lot of people jumping ship from business to business, dictating what they want to earn, and picking who they want to work for based on lifestyle. So I think that's going to impact employment as well, but I think that's going to funnel through to property, because people no longer want to be dictated to what their working environments are going to be like. People are now choosing, because of the fact that we now have the ability to work from home, and everybody can work from home now unless you're an aged care and stuff like that, right? But we've made it so obvious now because of COVID that there is enough technology out there for us to work from home, be managed from home, and see how active someone is from their work desk at home. And these people are obviously now choosing who they want to work for what they want to get paid, where they want to live, and what conditions and what environment they want to work within. So I think that's also going to add to an increase in property prices in the areas that those people want to live in when they work.
Yeah, and that's very prevalent in an employee led market, right? So when that shifts to an employer led market, as in there's more employees than they need, whereas it's the opposite is true right now, then perhaps that sort of chopping and changing might change. But mate, we're talking about some people have done the same job forever, but the current thing is that people jump all over the place, right? Whereas, I mean, all of us in some form for a very long period of time been in the property space. It's just what you do, right? I mean, so there's all that sort of chopping and changing goes on. And I think you're right. That will have an immediate effect on some of those areas if there's something that gravitates and pulls people to that area. But then we come back to, but for how long, right? That's the question. So, all right. Well, look, we've come to the end of our time. We've got one comment here, which I don't even know if we can fit it on the screen, which we can't, from Wayne, saying that people gravitate towards they want, desire rather than what they need. Well, that's exactly right. That's hence the analogy of the mining town. If you don't actually want to live there, but you might need to live there. So that's a good point. And so the forces going to and fro with employees and employer desires to work from home. So that's a good comment, Wayne, except that I can't fit it all on the screen. So even though what you have to say is fantastic, I even can't see the rest of it here. So I'll jump online and respond to that later, mate, when I don't have to cover CO's head with your words. All right, what I'm going to do is next week we're going to talk about the election, right? Because in election year, what happens to property? It stops. It dies. So how come it hasn't this year? That's what we want to talk about next week, right? Because we want to get to the end of the bottom of answering that question. All right, Realmers, any final thoughts or points before we knock off?
No, thanks, Scott. Thanks, Remo.
Thank you, boys. Your head looks really good, Scott. Looks like it's polished. You polished it when you had a shower before the event.
I did. I actually, and I've got this special, have you seen a bowling ball cleaning machine? So you sort of go in, you put your head in.
I doubt that you'd fit in there, but sure. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a big one. It's a big one. Yeah, it's for the brains, mate. It's a capacity. It's a capacity thing. You wouldn't understand. All right, I'm getting rid of Remo now, and that's it. This has been Property Realm. We've been talking about technology's impact on property prices. If you've got any more comments and you're watching this when we're not live, we will respond to you anytime that you comment. We love getting on there and having a chat. All right, and we've had our details scrolling at the bottom of the screen. If you've got any questions, hit us up on those below, or give us a call 1300 66 7789. I'm Scotty North, and this has been Property Realm.